These are my audience members, my mom, and my sister, and my dog. Over the past few weeks, I've been talking to you and any YouTube video person out there about the different steps that are needed to create a great science fair project. And in these last few videos, I've been talking more specifically about different organizational patterns that are needed and visual aids that you should include in your science fair project in order to get a good grade. Well, one of the first things I talked about when I first started talking about a science fair project is organizational patterns. And more specifically, I talked about two: the problem solution organizational pattern and the chronological order organizational pattern. Well, problem solution is really one of the simplest ones you could ever do. It's basically listed in the name. Find your problem and find your solution. So when you're writing a paper and you're incorporating the problem solution pattern, you just need to start off with your problem or your hypothesis and work your way through step by step and list out how, to anyone who wants to read your paper, how you came up with your conclusion, what steps you took in order to solve your problem, and just write out your conclusion, which you can also put on your poster board. The next one I talked about was the chronological order, and that one's the second most easiest thing. It's almost exactly like your problem solution pattern. You just list out every single step you ever took in your project. And this can include side notes and corrections that you made to your science fair project. Because, as we all know, things don't happen great on the first try. It takes a lot of tries in order for something to get right. So, in mine, I would talk about how it took extra time to plan out my stuff and extra time to gather materials, and how I changed my materials list from 3 volunteers to 6 volunteers to 4 volunteers, and that's what you would do in your paper. You would say, okay, first I stated my thesis, my hypothesis, what I want to do my project over. Then I found the materials that I would need in order to create this project. And then it's simple, just like that. Step by step by step by step, until you reach your conclusion. And then you simply would state your conclusion and how all those steps helped you obtain that conclusion to your project. Well, the next thing I talked about is the second most important thing you can have for a science fair project. It's visual aid. Now, you're walking into a science fair and you see a person with this bright, shining science fair poster, and that would catch your attention. That would be the first thing you notice. Out of all the other visual aids, the giant blinking, catch your attention thing is what you would notice. You wouldn't notice the kid who just showed up with a piece of paper and his project because he forgot it was due the next day. You're going to want a great visual aid because you want to be noticed by the judges and by anyone at the fair. Because if you don't get noticed, you won't get a good grade and you can't possibly win. So things you need to include on your visual aid, more specifically, are your materials list, your hypothesis, data tables, any kind of procedures you took, and extra background information. That's optional. And your conclusion, how you got where you got. Well, first off, I put a title on mine. And titles, I wouldn't say are mandatory, because you're also bringing along all your data and your papers, but I put one on mine because I felt like it would sum up all of my main ideas in a few simple words. Reaction time. That's what my whole entire project is over. Reaction time of my volunteers and how it changed over a certain period. And so no one really wants to read a humongous title. Why would someone want to read a title that is 5 sentences long when you can read one that's 2 words? Most people today are going to pay more attention to the short, simple, and sweet title than the long one, just because they don't have to waste so much time. So that's what I tried to do. I tried to catch their attention and summarize my main points in a few simple words. Next, I included a hypothesis and questions. Every poster needs a hypothesis if you're going to present it at a science fair project. They want to be able to see on your visual aid what your project is about and what questions you're going to be answering through your project. Well, on mine, this is also optional. I put questions. Questions that I felt my sister or my mom or my cousins, they might ask if I were to present this to them. Like, what is my own reaction time? How could I measure my reaction time by myself? So I put that up here so that it tells the audience that I'm also going to be answering those questions even though it's not my hypothesis. The next thing you should put, which is almost as big on my poster as my hypothesis is, and it's my materials list. So if someone wanted to replicate my experiment, they need to know what materials that I used in order to successfully replicate it. Excuse me. Well, for mine, I had a very few. I talked about how many volunteers I had, that I needed pencils and pens and paper, and simple stuff. Mine wasn't too elaborate. But the more elaborate your project is, the more you need to put on your materials list. Because you really, truly need to list every single thing that you used in your project. That way someone else can try to redo your project if they feel like your conclusion wasn't correct, or if they feel like they could get a different conclusion. Next, I put my procedure, which refers back to the chronological order and the problem-solution organizational patterns. The procedure is where you list your step by step by step, what you did and how you did it. And see, if you do your procedure, it makes writing these papers easier. Now, this is also optional for me. I put background information on my poster. Background information that I felt like if my younger sister couldn't understand some of the words I was using, exactly how those words, or words that are similar to them, relate back to what my project really is. Because my sister is 6 and she can't understand some words like stimulus or receptors. So that background information is going to help her and others learn about what I'm talking about. Next, I put a data table. This is probably the second most important thing you could have on a visual aid. If you don't have your data, no one is going to give your work any credibility. You don't have your answers to your hypothesis without data. If you don't list out the changes that occurred throughout your project, it looks like you kind of put it together last minute and didn't spend enough time on it, so no one's going to spend enough time on yours. If you don't want to work on it and put your data tables and find all the information, no one's going to put their time and effort into looking at your paper or project. So data tables are very, very important. It shows your answers, which also relates to your conclusion. Now, another optional thing that I put on my poster, yeah, I know, is the terms and concepts. Now, this goes with my background information because younger people or maybe different people might not know some of the terms. So if they don't understand it through my background information, I'm giving them another way to understand it through my terms and concepts. This defines reaction times and stimulus and receptors so that everyone can actually understand what I'm talking about. Because some terminology is different and other people might not know what my thing is about if I don't actually define the word. Then I put my conclusion. My conclusion is what sums up my entire hypothesis, my background information, materials list, procedure, data tables. It's all in one, and it's in 2 or 3 sentences at the most. And that's also what people want. They want something that shows them this is my answer, look at my answer. And it's short and sweet, that way people will notice my project. Because if my conclusion is 5 pages long, no one's going to take it very seriously, and they think I'm just writing stuff so I look smarter. So actually, my conclusions, the shorter and simpler it is, the more scientific you look. It's really backwards. I also put pictures and images and question marks and all these different little colored things. That way, someone would notice my stuff. Just like I said earlier, if you don't have something that's worth noticing, then no one's going to look at it. People want color, and they want lights and glitter, and they want feathers and pretty things. And I tried to incorporate that, even though I'm not very artistic. I tried to put that so that way I would catch some people's attention, and they would actually pay attention to my project. I also have, at the very bottom, so it's not to take away from the rest of my work, I have my works cited. Works cited gives your entire project credibility. People might think you're copying and pasting stuff if you don't have a works cited. It's what really gives your paper and your posters and your project all the things that it needs in order for people to say, okay, she did her research. She actually might know what she's talking about when she's doing this project. So that's basically how you would do a visual aid. Excuse me. So I hope to have summarized what I've been talking about in these past few weeks into this one video. My visual aid, which includes all of these things, and the organizational patterns I did in my paper. Okay, thank you for watching.